All right, Shalom. This is your brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Wakar Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Yahweh is the name of the one they ignorantly call God. Yahweh Shai is the name of the one they ignorantly call Jesus. Bahashem is in the name. Rakah is spirit. Kodash is holy. All right. Akim is brothers. Akwath is sisters. And Shalom means peace. And all of this is in the Paleo Hebrew. All right. I want to go into a lesson on two articles that I found through the spirit. And I want to start off with a prophecy that we are coming into very gradually but surely. All right, this is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 and verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword in their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. All right. And what you have going on the planet, all right, is a shift. All right. You had before the so-called the pandemic. All right. You had nationalists. All right. Which are people who are for their nation. All right. And they're against globalization, which is a consolidation of power given to world organizations. Now, I want to bring out some articles on the fact that there is a consolidation happening, and ultimately the destruction of democracy in the West is going to result in sedition amongst these Edomites who are dedicated to the liberties that they have in this society. All right, I want to start off with this article here. All right, and it says, The Global State of Democracy 2021. I'm just going to read the first paragraph. All right. I may get into the second, but the first one is the one I want to really touch on. All right. It says democracy is at risk. Its survival is endangered by a perfect storm of threats, both from within and from a rising tide of authoritarianism. The COVID plan has exacerbated these threats through the imposition of states of emergency, the spread of disinformation, and crackdowns on independent media and freedom of expression. And how is that done, right? What most people are not considering is that you have these companies, all right, these corporations. When you think about Facebook, when you think about Twitter, these are platforms that are utilized by a large portion of the West, all right, which is where democracy pretty much lives. Now, the way they're able to censor, if you will, freedom of expression is because those corporations are private entities, so they can refuse to allow someone to put information on their platforms if they deem that it is a violation of their community rights. This is why brothers' pages come down. All right, because Esau determines that they're a violation of the community rights of certain programs. Now, this is a slow but sure way to destroy, all right, these liberties that were written in the fabric of Babylon, as these Edomites say it. Okay. Now, what this is saying is that democracy, all right, these liberties that people have enjoyed are seriously at risk. And the C-19 contributed heavily to that. All right. The ability to give people states of emergency. All right. The ability to determine when someone can leave their house and when they can't. All right. What they can wear concerning their face. All of these are telltale signs that the freedom once enjoyed in this place is slowly but surely being taken out of the picture. And this is going to result in sedition. All right. Most Jakes look at it like the Edomites, they're going to come against Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans. Not initially. All right. Initially, they're going to come up against their own government, which is trying to incorporate itself into this world organization system. You know, a lot of the information we got about Biden and the World Health Organization was from Edomites. Edomites on the right-hand side. And when I say right hand, I'm talking about conservatives, not righteousness. Okay? Again, this is 2 Esdras 15 and 15. I'll start at 16. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Why? Because these Edomites are aware that the power that they once had as common power, all right, because really white privilege is really just Edomite privilege. And it's a privilege that comes when your nation is in rulership. Now, what they recognize is that that power is being taken from them and being concentrated to a particular group of Edomites. And this is going to equal up to sedition. All right, this is going to result in sedition. And that's why you see a rise in so-called white nationalists. All right, it's a rise because they understand that there's a transition happening and they're not going to benefit from it. This is why you see a lot of Edomites tell Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans that we all bleed red. You know, the PC motto of Proud Boys is it's not about race, it's about liberties, freedoms. All right, because at this point, that is their biggest problem at this point. It's not Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans necessarily. It's the liberties that they've enjoyed in this society being taken away through the world beginning to come together under this government, all right, under this one world system. And we see that play out in Revelation, the 13th chapter, all right, particularly in the 15th verse, all right, and it reads, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. All right, so the power and the resources of this society, all right, is shifting. It's shifting from the good old American way, as it's called, liberties and freedoms, so-called justice for all. It's leaving that idea and it's going to a global image of the beast. That's what's happening right now. And sedition is going to play out when these Edomites realize that there's a point of no return. It hasn't happened yet necessarily, but eventually there's going to be a point of no return. And these Joe Six-Pack Edomites are going to realize that they've reached that point of no return. And it's going to make that capital, the rush of the capital, the invasion of the capital, it's going to make that look very small in comparison to what's going to happen as a result of everything falling apart and those so-called liberties being taken away. All right, so when we go back to this article, it says the C-19 pandemic has exacerbated these threats through the imposition of states of emergency, the spread of disinformation, and crackdowns on independent media and freedom of expression. All right, and I have another article because it talks about the crackdown on freedom of expression. The reason you don't see these things play out on a global stage as far as the information that they label as disinformation, even though you have doctors, you have economists, all speaking the same thing. The reason that these things aren't put on major platforms is because of this. All right. And this is another article, and it talks about which corporations control the world. All right. And as you can see, all right, under media, all right, under media, look at the amount of companies that are in ownership of all the major media platforms. You have Comcast, Time Warner, Walt Disney, Viacom, and News Corporation. And under that umbrella, you can see all of the different companies that they own. All right. So we're in a point where there's a corporate takeover, and through the corporate takeover, they're going to be able to take away those liberties. Why is that? Because if everyone uses a platform like Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, and the community guidelines determine that any freedom of expression that they don't agree with, they can take off the table, then that's them causing that freedom of expression to be taken away without necessarily changing any laws. And you're noticing this grow more and more. All right. This is only the beginning of these things. And eventually there's going to be a transition, because what you can see is there's a consolidation. All right. These corporations are getting extremely big, huge. In the East, all right, the elder went into an article about the super apps. An app where people go to pay bills, to pay for things on a regular basis. All right. To buy plane tickets. All right. Depending on what part of the East you're at, they may even determine where you can go. If you get a red health marker, you can't go in certain areas. Now, this is an example of a corporation or a company that has built a platform that becomes a necessity to people. And because it's a company, it's a organization, it's a corporation, they can determine the rules, and their rules don't have to actually agree with the law as far as liberties. And what I'm bringing out through the Spirit is that the Lord is allowing this to happen because eventually sedition is going to play out on a large scale. All right. Particularly in the West, when these Edomites realize that those rights and liberties that they've had for so long are going to be taken away, and they're going to be treated just like the niggers that they hate. All right. And that's what they realize. That's why they're beginning to rise up more and more on more frequent events. You know, we just heard about the 31 guys that got arrested, and they were going to protest the alphabet community in the midst of Pride Month. Because in the midst of these guys these Edomites losing that privilege, their values, quotation marks, all right, are being changed completely. Now their children are learning about the alphabet community, and these things are wicked. Make no mistake about it. But for the purpose of this lesson, I'm showing through the Spirit that when these Edomites realize that democracy as they know it is about to change, they're going to rise up in violence. This is 2 Esdras chapter 9 and verse 3. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. And this is what we're seeing. All right. This is outside of what's going on in the economy. All right. This is outside of the squeeze, if you will. Everything going up but the check. All of these things are just added pressures. And what you see is a shift. And that's why it's no coincidence, because, again, the so-called elites are using this as a transfer of wealth. See, at one point, all these Edomites were able to share privilege. And depending on how ambitious you were as an Edomite, you could climb up to a certain place. You had liberties, permissions. You were treated better than the other so-called immigrants that were here. Now that's being taken away. And the moment more and more Edomites realize that these things are being taken away, they're going to react violently. And you can see how easily control has been implemented through these world organizations, all right, as well as corporations. World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum. These are huge global platforms that are arguing against nationalism, against democracy, really. And they're saying that all the countries of the world should come together under one umbrella. All right. And that is Revelation 13 playing out gradually. All right. Again, this is Revelation 13 and 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. All right. And that's why these super apps, all right, these apps that people use on a day-to-day basis, eventually they're going to change their terms of agreement. And you're going to enter a world where they dictate more control over what you can and can't do or say. And because of the love of convenience, most people, all right, are going to worship the image of the beast. And those who don't, they will be killed. Now, I bring this out all the time. All right. The elders bring this out all the time. All right. When you go to Revelation 13 and 15 and you get the root word for killed, the actual word in that verse is apokteno. All right. But when you go into the root word, because the regular definition says to kill in any way, whatever. When you go into the root word, it says of separation. All right. All these things, the infrastructure is being built for a transition from what people call normal today to something completely different. And the moment these Edomites realize what's actually happening and that it's actually happening, it's not going away, they're going to react violently. This is why the scriptures speak of sedition. Because they understand something is changing in their world, all right? And the things that they're used to, they're not going to have access to again. All right, we're not going back to a normal. Now, most people are going to look at the transition of this world as convenient. All right, instead of all these separate governments, we got one government. All right, instead of, having to control or censor what people say, we just have the corporations. If you don't like Facebook or YouTube, then you're separated from the majority of the people who use these apps to communicate. And if you do use the apps, you have to use it under their agreements. These two factors within themselves, the world health, the world trade, the world economic, the EU, NATO, all of these world global organizations are eventually going to argue that the power of individual government should be limited. And it sounds absurd to most people in the West, but you can already see this playing out globally. And when it hits home for these Edomites, whose hope has been in that liberty and the so-called rights that they have, when that's taken away and they realize that they're going to be treated like every other servant of the society, they're going to react violently. All right, when you go into this article, and I'll read one more paragraph in it. And when you really take a look at this, when it says what corporations control the world, from banking to media to food, it's very few companies, very few diverse companies. Oil, and these are just a few sectors. When you see all of these brands and all these different, it's really just the same companies when you boil down to who's supplying the actual finances. And these corporations can determine, hey, you can't do that. You can't say that. Unless you want to use our platform, because this doesn't even mention technology. All right, you think about Facebook. It owns Instagram. It owns WhatsApp. Google, I believe, owns YouTube. I could be wrong. But that's just an example of these big tech companies that own a large portion of what people use to communicate online. And if they determine that something is not allowed or you can't do that, regardless of the Constitution, regardless of liberties and freedoms, they can remove it. And when these Edomites see that it's going to play out, not just on the internet, but in real life, they're going to react violently. All right. And that's why you have articles like the Global State of Democracy 2021. All right. It says, I'll read this one more time. C-19 pandemic has exacerbated these threats through the imposition of states of emergency, the spread of disinformation, and crackdowns on independent media and freedom of expression. The Global State of Democracy 2021 shows that more countries than ever are suffering from democratic erosion, which is what? Decline in democratic quality, including in established democracies. All right. And the West is considered established democracies. Lockdowns, all right, mandates. All of these things are a sign of the decline of democratic quality. And eventually, democracy has to be taken out of the way for the image of the beast to go global. Understand that. All right, the elites are not thinking on a international level. They're not even thinking on a national level. And I'm talking about nations. They're not even including all of their people as the so-called white man. They're not including all so-called white people in this equation. They're including a small population of Edomites who will have all the control. All right. When you go into the definitions, that's called supranational. All right. Real quick. You know what? I don't want to ruin, because I want to be able to put those articles in the chat, Lord willing, in the description. So I'm going to just look up supranational, because the elites are described as supranational. All right. And that's having power or influence that transcends national boundaries or governments. All right. And these so-called elites, all right, because really they're the basis of men. They're controlling everything through these corporations and these organizations. And this is why you see an increase in that influence. And when these regular Edomites realize that that power they had is being transitioned from their commonwealth to those elites, they're going to react violently. All right. Esau is playing chess. All right. Not checkers. Okay. And this is why through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, the Lord just gives us the basics of it. Prophecy tells us the basic agenda, the goal at hand. Sedition will happen because the Lord said it. All right. Real quick. This is Isaiah 55:11. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. All right. And the Lord said, according to prophecy, that you would have uproars of the people. All right. You would have sedition among men. All right. They will not regard their kings or princes. In Isaiah the 19th chapter, the scriptures say the Egyptian shall be against the Egyptian. And we know that all of these things are going to play out because the Lord said it would. All right. And what we're finding out is that these are the details that lead up to those statements that the Lord has made concerning prophecy. The Lord gives us the basics, the general agenda, so that all of us can understand it without having to go into great detail. All right. And then as they play out, you get to see the details. All right. So Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakudash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yashar Allah, and a sincere salutation to Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.